So this next story, I think, sounds a lot better on face value than it actually is. Microsoft is enabling BitLocker device encryption by default on Windows 11. In Windows 11 version 24H2, Microsoft is reducing the hardware requirements for automatic device encryption, opening it up to many more devices, including ones running the home version of Windows 11. For those not aware, BitLocker is Microsoft's proprietary full disk encryption software, and up until now, it's only been available for the more paid versions of Windows. So like, like Office and Professional or something like that, but not Home, which is like probably 90% of people. Sucks to suck. Device encryption no longer requires hardware security test interface or modern standby, and encryption will also be enabled even if untrusted direct memory access buses and interfaces are detected. So the latest Windows 11 version 24H2 update comes pre-installed on Microsoft's range of Copilot Plus PCs, which we don't recommend because we've talked about recall. That's it. Yeah. Anyways, is expected to be available on existing machines in late September. That means if you clean install Windows 11 later this year or buy a new PC with 24H2 installed, BitLocker device encryption will be enabled by default. If you simply upgrade, Microsoft won't enable it automatically. This is where I got irritated. The article goes on to talk about how like encryption might potentially degrade performance. And then they basically have these instructions for like, oh, here's how to not turn on encryption, which I think is ridiculous because unless you're like a professional gamer where every single nanosecond counts, there's not a lot of situations I can think of where the performance hit is actually going to be bad enough to justify not turning this thing on. They said in the article specifically, they're like, it could be as much as, I think they said like 43%. And I'm like, I really want to know what you were doing that performance was degraded that hard. They said you can avoid it if you're using a local account on a clean install. When you first set up a new machine and log in, you will be prompted to sign in with a Microsoft account to finish encrypting the device. BitLocker can still be manually enabled using the control panel on local accounts, though. You can also disable device encryption through a toggle in privacy and security on the Windows 11 settings. I'm still a fan of VeraCrypt. I think VeraCrypt is better. There have been vulnerabilities in the past that VeraCrypt were immune to, that BitLocker fell victim to. I've also seen several articles over the years about updates breaking BitLocker and like people can't get into their machines and stuff. So I'm not really a fan of BitLocker, but it is kind of nice to see them like taking that step towards security. So I guess that's a good thing.
For the record, I mean, I've seen countless stories too of people who got locked out of their VeraCrypt containers as well, which is also a huge deal. So I think that you're going to always take that risk with full disk encryption, and full disk encryption is just one more reason why consistent backups are really important, regardless of your method. I've seen some criticism over like the security of BitLocker, and I think that's super valid, but I think that's really missing the point of the story. For me, and I'll talk about macOS in a second, but when it comes to actual proper full disk encryption, there is no operating system, to my knowledge, including Linux distros, that by default enables full disk encryption. A lot of them make it really easy. Like a lot of Linux distros, when you're installing it, you have to click just a checkbox. I think this is a really cool feature that it would be awesome to make this the default. I can't think of many situations, and it's like mobile operating systems at this point, where as long as you have a password set up, you have full disk encryption in your mobile device. So it's really cool to see this kind of precedent set by Microsoft of all people. Now, I was going to add a little thing with macOS. macOS does not enable File Vault, which is their BitLocker equivalent by default, but anything with an Apple T2 security chip does encrypt your files, but it wraps it in an additional layer of security if you use File Vault. So you should still use File Vault on the Mac.
Yeah, just a quick addition on the topic of keeping backups. Test your backups too. Make sure they're actually there.
Also, I mean, this is one of my biggest criticisms of Windows that they just fixed. I've always been really pissed off how they paywall BitLocker behind Windows Pro, which is really silly. I've just never heard of paywalling security like this before. And I think that like now that people have an easy way to turn on full disk encryption in Windows is a big deal, because VeraCrypt isn't the most user-friendly experience either. So this is like one easy thing to make things a little bit easier for people. Thanks for watching this surveillance report clip. This is a clip from our surveillance report podcast where we break down the privacy and security news every single week to keep you as safe as possible. So if you want to check out the full podcast and get all the news, check that out down in the description or click one of the things here to check out the main channel. See you next time.